Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 108. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on this movie discussion where we break down a new movie that we got to check out in theaters or in streaming. I'll ramble on about my overall thoughts about the movie, my pros and cons, favorite performances. I'll even recommend whether you should check this out in theaters or maybe wait for streaming or even skip it. And then at the end of the podcast, I'll throw in one more segment in which I talk about whether that film is timeless. Is it something that I would want to rewatch? Is it something that stands the test of time and could be added to my movie collection? Obviously, just my opinion. We all have different thoughts, but that's what makes it fun, right? We're able to interact about these new movies that are coming out. Before we jump into this week's podcast, though, I did want to highlight that episode 107 is out now on all platforms, wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, you name it, it's on there. Search up Timeless Movie Podcast, and you'll be able to listen to episode 107, in which I talk about a movie from 2024 called Strange Darling. I had a chance to try to check this out in 2024, didn't get to, so I thought I'd do a little bit of a catch up here in January of 2025, and I was just blown away by how great the movie was. So go ahead and listen to Strange Darling on episode 107. Let me know your thoughts. Leave some comments down below wherever you listen or leave a review and let me know. And that way we can interact about that movie as well. All right, let's go ahead and jump in to episode 108, in which we are talking about the movie called One of Them Days, directed by Lawrence Lamont. This one's produced by Issa Rae, and it stars Keke Palmer and SZA. I had seen a couple of trailers for this one. I want to say maybe like around the November, December timeframe. And I was really hooked on the idea already just because we don't really get too many comedies like this that are just straight comedies. If you guys have noticed in the last couple of years, really, we've gotten a lot of comedies that are really mixed with other types of genres. Sometimes we get like these horror comedies in a way. Other times we get a lot of action comedies. You know, I've heard a lot of people say that the Marvel movies are like an action comedy, and I can totally see that. And we haven't really gotten these just straight comedy type of stories. So as soon as I saw the trailer for One of Them Days, I was in. I was like, okay, cool, something different, something refreshing. Let's go ahead and get something funny. And I'm just hoping that it at least makes me laugh and it's my type of humor as well. So that's really what kind of got me hooked, is just wanting to see more comedies play out in this year. So now that I got a chance to check it out on opening night, let's go ahead and dive into my non-spoiler thoughts of One of Them Days. Okay, after leaving the theater and checking out One of Them Days, I gotta say that this was a great way to start 2025. I'm not gonna lie. This movie was a fun time at the theaters. I was cracking up at different moments throughout the movie. It had me laughing. There was a couple of hilarious scenes. We'll talk about some of those later, but the jokes just came from everywhere, whether it was Keke Palmer or SZA, getting into these ridiculous situations, or these other side characters that just got themselves involved in the story. No matter what it was, it just had me engaged. It had me laughing, and it had me caring about these characters that were coming out on screen. Now, besides it being funny, which obviously is really the prime highlight of this movie, and the main reason of why folks would want to check this out, is just to kind of get a little bit of a laugh going on. There's also a lot of heart in this film too. There's a lot of things that, from a theme perspective, it shows and highlights a lot of different types of elements that I think are really relatable to everybody that would watch this movie. And so definitely enjoyed my time watching this movie, and it was actually a packed theater, which made me really happy that more and more folks are trying to check out these movies. And again, it's something different, right? It's a comedy, a straight comedy that we haven't really had in the last couple of years. Pretty sure I might be forgetting another comedy that came out recently in 2024 or 2023, and I'm hoping that we get to see more in 2025. As a general synopsis, though, to kind of explain and set up the story of One of Them Days, this film basically revolves around two characters, Drew and Alyssa. Drew is played by Keke Palmer, and Alyssa is played by SZA. They're roommates living in Los Angeles. You have Drew working at Norm's. She's a waitress, and she's just trying to work her way up in life in order to just get something better, right? A better job, a better career, a better life. And so she actually ends up getting an interview for a corporate job at Norm's. And so she's excited, she's ready to go. But before she even gets that interview at 4 p.m., she actually gets into a little bit of a sticky situation in which Drew and Alyssa's landlord for their apartment proclaims that they did not receive the rent for that month. And so he basically gives them an ultimatum. If you do not provide us with the money for rent, you're basically going to get evicted, and the money has to be provided by 6 p.m. that same day. So they go on this crazy adventure. And as you can figure this out as well, they go through and they find out that Alyssa's boyfriend, Keyshawn, who has been living with them for the last couple of months, ended up taking their rent money and not giving it to the landlord. And so now Alyssa and Drew are on a mission to not only find Keyshawn, but get the money and pay their rent. That way they don't get evicted from their apartment. And from that point on, they just go on a crazy little adventure where things just start to unfold in the story and things don't go as planned for them. So they get into a lot of craziness, but that's kind of where I'll leave it. Overall, this was a great comedy. I had a fun time. The characters of, again, Kiki Palmer and SZA, they were hilarious, but also other characters played a part in making the story very fun as well. If you're into the comedy genre, if you're into Kiki Palmer and SZA, I highly recommend you guys check this out. It just was a fun time, and I definitely recommend you guys just kind of give this one a shot just because of how funny and how great the story is as well. All right, now that I kind of gave some of my overall non spoiler thoughts, let's go ahead and dive into some spoilers. Let's dissect this movie a little bit more. That way, it at least gives you a little bit more into my mind as to what I was thinking as I watched One of Them Days. So, if you have not seen One of Them Days, I highly recommend jump out of the video, watch the movie, come back. That way, you can hear some of my thoughts. And in the comments, let me know if you agree or disagree with some of the pros and cons that I'll throw out there. All right, hopefully that gives you enough time to jump out of the video because we're going to get into some spoilers. But my first pro of why I enjoyed One of Them Days so much was, put very simply, the story. I mean, I really loved how the story just unfolded throughout the movie. A lot of times, comedies, they put in a lot of different jokes to kind of make you laugh, but the story is kind of weak, right? It just doesn't really make sense, or there's just things that, logically you're like, okay, that doesn't really add up. But in this one, this story was just developed and it completely makes sense. It takes place all in one day. You're following two characters just trying to get their rent paid. That's all the true essence of this story is about. But it eventually just unfolds into these things that are just unexpected. So, like I mentioned before, they start with just wanting to get their rent money, but then it snowballs. It goes into, well, they can't get their rent money because Keyshawn ended up investing it in shirts. So now they have to go to plan B, which is trying to make up $1,500 in that same day. So they go to a payday loan location to try to get a loan. They get laughed out of the building. They go to a blood bank in order to draw blood and get money. They get chased down by a lady named Bernice, who is apparently another girlfriend that Keyshawn sees. And so, they get chased down by Bernice and wanting to get hurt. And then they also, by the end of the movie, get hunted down by a criminal. And so there's just all these unexpected things that you don't foresee when you start watching this movie. But those are the elements of what I love most is I love it when a story can tell me a very simple premise, but then take me into different directions. I really love that. And this film was able to do that multiple times. Another thing that I appreciated so much about it One of Them Days is the decisions that Drew and Elisa were making throughout the movie. They had consequences, and those consequences led them into hilarious interactions. It was so funny because, again, they went to the little payday location. They get laughed out of the building. You have a little cameo from Cat Williams. He's like a supporting character in the film, and he's kind of telling them right from the beginning, don't do it. If you keep getting a loan, if you can't pay it today, you're not going to be able to pay it tomorrow. You have Janelle James, who is famously known from Abbott Elementary, and she comes out as like a nurse that, helps them take out blood, and they have a whole funny interaction. So a lot of different things that end up happening to these characters, again, it isn't just Alyssa and Drew that are coming up with the funny moments and the funny lines. It's really just the situation that's happening to them or around them as well. That makes the story so enjoyable and so funny to watch. Other things that also happen in regards to like some of their consequences, like, their house and their apartment is breaking down. It eventually catches fire and, but eventually, again, that consequence leads them to something better. So that's, again, one of those aspects of a story that I really enjoy that, hey, you mentioned something maybe in the first act, and in the third act, because of that consequence or because of that decision, it gets answered or it gets closed out in regards to the full story. So again, I really appreciated how it all played out all the way to the conclusion of it. And one other aspect that I really love about these types of stories is it all plays out in one day. I mentioned this, I think, in a previous review for a movie in 2024. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I really think it is so awesome when a team can develop a movie or a story that just takes place in one day, one location, or maybe a couple locations, but you're just following these characters. And again, it feels like you're along in the journey with them. As you're watching this movie, you feel like you're with Alyssa and Drew. You feel like you're going place to place, just watching them survive, watching them figure out, well, what's the next plot that we can come up with to get money in order to pay our rent. It's so cool when a story is so good that, again, it just takes place in one day that by the end of it, as an audience, you're exhausted. You're like, okay, man, like we went through so many things, and oh crap, that was just one day. So I love it when those things happen. You could see it through the performances of all the characters, but it's also, again, how the story just kind of unfolds in front of you. But long-winded pro, just to say that, again, the story itself and how they wrote it, the dialogue, everything just works so well. So that's my first pro for one of them days. Second pro is the chemistry between Drew and Alyssa. They're the core of this movie, but Kiki Palmer and SZA, right from the first conversation, it just, you could feel the chemistry between them. You can feel like their bond is super strong, like they've been friends for many, many years. And I think it just works so well that that even the audience, as me, at least from my perspective, in my opinion, I can feel that kind of energy between them of how good friends they are and how they try to help each other in their lives. You can feel that, which makes you connect to their characters a lot more. But there's also moments where not only are they propping each other up, but sometimes they're challenging each other. And it's so real. It's so believable. You can see, like, when there is a little bit of tension, you can feel like, okay, Drew is a little bit upset at Alyssa for some of the decisions that they've made. But again, hey, they're friends. They love each other and they know that they can get farther together rather than apart. So I really love that. There's, I think, two things that obviously go into why this chemistry worked. Like I mentioned before, Kiki Palmer and SZA, their performances are awesome in this movie. Each one has their own funny and hilarious moments. Kiki Palmer obviously has some great facial expressions, and the way that she kind of just has this awesome energy on screen. It makes it so fun to watch. I also got to call out the writing, the way that the dialogue was kind of played out. Everything, again, just added so much to every character that came out in the screen, and it just, again, added to the core element of this movie. Is that, yes, it is a comedy, but the core element that the movie wanted you to remember was, hey, you have to care about Drew and Alyssa. These two are strong together, and we need to make sure that, again, we can believe in them. That way, we can connect with them and understand the struggle that they're going through. And that's another aspect that I really wanted to quickly highlight for the second pro is I think the film did a really good job displaying the struggle that Alyssa and Drew went through. There's, a lot of times when you're watching movies, you can see certain characters struggle or go through something, just depending on how many plots are in the film or what's going on the story. But here, because it all takes place in one day, you're seeing Drew and Alyssa struggle so much from going place to place, trying to find money, trying to not get evicted from their home. And then at the end of the day, they're able to really learn a lot about themselves, right? About how, again, together, they're able to work and be a lot better and just survive. Again, how they were able to display them struggling and surviving is awesome because, sometimes movies might miss on that piece of it, but this one, for one of them days, actually really landed it. And it makes it very relatable, right? Every human goes through a struggle, right? Maybe different people have different struggles and different levels as well, but everybody can at least relate to one point in their lives of having to go through something tough. And I think this movie really nails that kind of a feeling and theme too. All right, and then last but not least, my final pro is I really enjoy that the setting of this movie took place in LA. Now, I think you might think that this is a little bit of a weird one, but again, guys, I'm from LA. LA has gone through a rough and terrible last 2 weeks because of these ridiculous fires. My heart goes out to all of the people that have lost homes, family members, and have just been impacted and affected by these ridiculous fires that have just hit LA, because of these winds and the dry conditions. It sucks. And so it's terrible when you see people suffering. But again, I wanted to take this as a win, right? Like we typically have these types of stories play out in different cities. So I'm really glad that we got to see LA, and not only just like the fancy parts of LA, right? Not only downtown LA or, Beverly Hills or Hollywood or things of that nature. No, in one of them days, we get to highlight like a lot of these different types of smaller neighborhoods, apartments, these streets where two cars might not fit. A lot of people, so a lot of times when you watch movies and you see LA, you always see these very wide streets. But in one of them days, they're actually filming on specific streets where you could barely see two cars fit. There's a bunch of parking all over the place. So very interesting pro, I know, but I just wanted to call out that I really appreciated that they used Los Angeles as the setting. And I'm glad that the one of them days was able to kind of portray Los Angeles in a very cool and different and interesting way as compared to other movies that use Los Angeles as a setting as well. So that's my third pro in regards to one of them days. If I can move over to my cons real quickly, I just wanted to highlight that I don't really have any cons. I don't really have any nitpicks or notes. Again, there was really nothing that caught my attention that made me question what was going on in the story. Once again, the story was really one of the stronger elements for me, apart from the story being very funny. But there was never anything that kind of just made me think like, oh, this logically doesn't make sense, or wait, what happened to this character? So to me, again, no cons as of right now from watching one of the days. I've only watched it once. Maybe if I rewatch it, I might catch a couple of different details as well. But as of today, no nitpicks or cons for me. So let's go ahead and wrap this up with some of my favorite things that I enjoyed about one of them days. Let's start off with favorite performance. For me, favorite performance is going to go to Kiki Palmer. She played Drew so awesome. Again, from being a waitress at Norm's to go through these different types of struggles with Elisa. She interacts with this character called Maniac, and you can definitely see when she starts kind of, okay, freaking out because she seems to be very in tune with like, oh man, this guy is very good looking, but she's also very nervous. So you could see when Kiki Palmer kind of transforms into that. Then there's also these very emotional moments when she's having to kind of go through an interview and then also facing Elisa one on one and kind of telling her the truth about what she feels about her, about how she just like doesn't ever have a plan. She's always like too much free thinking and doesn't really understand what she should do in her life. And so Kiki Palmer just is able to nail a lot of different types of emotions and tones within the movie. Again, she's hilarious as well. She has some funny lines, and just everything that goes on in this movie just really works for me. And I can't wait to see Kiki Palmer in more movies as well. So shout out to Kiki Palmer as my favorite performance in one of them days. Moving on to favorite scene of one of them days, I gotta call out this one scene where Drew and Alyssa end up going to draw blood. So they go to the blood bank. This is where they interact with Janelle James' character of Ruby, who is a new nurse. This is her first day working and drawing blood. And again, they're Drew and Alyssa are at a point where they really need to start making up some money in order to come up with their rent. And so Drew goes first, and as they start drawing blood, Drew starts asking her like, "Can I make more?" And then you could just see Ruby go, "Do it." And then they just start drawing blood and drawing blood, and then basically an hour passes by, and then you have Elisa, who was in the waiting room, come back in, and she sees Drew, and Drew is pale as can be, and she's just like lying on the side of her shoulder, looking like she's about to pass out because of how many bags of blood she's had to extract. And so it was just a hilarious moment and like a hilarious kind of shift, because you're thinking, okay, well, how much blood is she gonna do? And then I did not expect them to like kind of put some type of makeup on Elisa and Kiki Palmer's character and make her just look like she's about to die. And so that was freaking hilarious. That was one of my favorite moments. There's a lot of hilarious moments. I could have chosen a lot of different ones. There's obviously that payday one. I had seen that one in the theaters or in the trailers, so that's why I didn't want to choose that one. But for me, it was when Drew ended up almost dying when she was giving blood at the blood bank. All right. And then last but not least, I have my favorite shot. This one's a little bit tougher, I'm not going to lie, just because, again, this film has different shots and you're kind of following Alyssa and Drew throughout the story. So it might not be a cinematic shot that you can kind of call out as like, hey, this is like a really cool screensaver or poster. But I really enjoyed a shot where you have Alyssa helping Drew walk out of the blood bank, and they have these different clothes because they ended up getting blood all over their clothes. And so you just see Alyssa helping Drew walk because she just got like four bags of blood drawn out of her, and so she can barely walk normally. And then the clothes that they were wearing were just ridiculous. That like I think Alyssa was wearing like a tracksuit, and then you had Drew wearing some type of like very flashy, like highlight green type of a outfit. It was just funny, but that was probably one of my favorite shots of the movie. All right, everybody. Those are all of my pros, my cons, and my favorite moments of one of them days. But here comes one of the important parts of this podcast. Is one of them days timeless? Is it something that I would rewatch in the future over and over again or add it to my rotation? Or if I bought physical media, would I buy this one to add to my movie collection? I know I always say this and I sound like a broken record. I apologize, but this is hard. This is tough. I watched this on opening night. I've been mulling it over. I think I'm going to lean towards one of them days being a timeless movie. It just made the cut. To me, it is hilarious. I've been waiting for a just straight up comedy to come around to just really grab my attention and have me really just have fun at the theaters. Now, am I saying that I haven't had fun in the theaters? No, I've had a great time watching movies like Dune, watching movies like Deadpool and Wolverine, and Nora. Those are like, movies that are experiences, are fun times. But I've been waiting for a movie that is just straight comedy with a good story. And this one hit all of those marks on the checklist from the characters themselves, like, SZA and Kiki Palmer, who they play. You have funny side characters like Cat Williams and Janelle James. And you have, again, a story that has heart and it is relatable to anybody that might watch it. So, to me, in my personal opinion, one of them days is a timeless movie. I can definitely see myself rewatching this in the future. Maybe not every year, but maybe every so often. And I would definitely recommend friends and other folks that want to watch something that's comedy. Definitely check this one out. I also feel like comedy is one of those genres that it's kind of like an outlier, right? Because a comedy doesn't have to be a 10 out of 10, but it has to really make you laugh. And when you think back of like, oh, I remember how much fun I had watching this movie in the theaters, even if something is just logically doesn't make sense to the story, you could still go back to it because it made you laugh. It hits that funny bone that you have. So it completely makes sense why certain movies from comedy perspective hit some people, but might not hit others. So again, to me, I would definitely recommend one of them days. Go check it out in theaters because it is timeless for me. But what about you guys? Have you had a chance to check out one of them days? If you have, let me know down below in the comments. Leave a review as well. I definitely want to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with me? Do you think this movie's timeless? Who was your favorite performance and what was your favorite scene in the movie? All right, everybody. Appreciate you staying all the way through to listen to my thoughts about one of them days. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 108 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next episode because we're going to be covering The Wolf Man. Super excited to talk about that one. But again, make sure to check that episode out when it does release. All right, guys, have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you guys later.